Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Geeks. My name is Tim.
And I'm Alex, and we are two brothers on a quest to bring you the perfect pairing of whiskey and comics.
Absolutely, sir. How are you? We haven't recorded an episode together in a while.
It's been a minute. I was away, 3 weeks off. I spent 2 weeks up at our family cottage. You probably saw some pictures up on our social media about that. I was able to bring a ridiculous amount of whiskey with me, and then the whiskey dad.
Let's talk about that. I would make a joke about do you have a problem, but while you were away doing that as well, I did an inventory on my own. The status of my, I'll call it a collection, even though we're not collectors.
Right.
Starting a YouTube channel where you review whiskeys, and then starting a whiskey club where you're hosting whiskey tastings. I'm over 50, which I know isn't a ton, but
it's a lot.
It was shocking to realize that I had over 50 single malt whiskeys in my house. My wife was very surprised.
Well, I mean, other than straight up whiskey bars, you have more whiskey in your house than 90% of restaurants.
Right? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of times we'll go out for, we go out for dinner.
Remember the before times?
Remember restaurants? Sorry, everybody in the restaurant business. I hope you're all doing okay. There'd be times that it's like, oh, I'm going to get a whiskey. And then like, can I see your whiskey menu? And there's like 4 to choose from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about the cottage, because yes, if for those that don't follow us at the Whiskey Geeks on Instagram, I think it was just in a story, but you did post an obscene amount of whiskey that made it to the cottage.
Yeah. So I brought up 8 or 9, so like I'm up. Yeah. So like, and they're not like end of bottles that I was like, oh, I'll bring up and like, we'll, do a bottle kill or whatever. So I brought up, I was probably closer to a dozen.
Yeah, and that's fine.
And yeah, and I was like, oh, it's good to have variety. You don't want to end up with like all super peated stuff when you're up there. Who knows what you're going to be in the mood for. And then of course the whiskey dad, him and our mom came up
brought
as
up
well.
75.
And well, he did the same thing, right? So he brought up a whole bunch. And the night before we left, we actually did have a phone call
because I called him and bringing the same.
Yeah. So he sent me a text and he's like, "You got a minute?" So I gave him a call and I was like, "I think I know what you want to talk about." And he goes, "What?" It's like, "Do you want to make sure we don't double up?" He's like, "Yeah, apple doesn't fall far from the tree."
That's hilarious.
So
I mean, the cool thing is you were able to record a couple of like neck pour sessions. So if you go to our YouTube channel, for those just listening to this on the podcast, you're actually able to film a couple of new reviews of some brand new whiskeys that we got up at the cottage, which was great. So
yeah, it was really nice. My wife Beth, she manned the camera, and actually my son held the camera at one point for one that we did. I took him up top. There's these really nice caves that are up there, so I brought the bottle all the way up to get some pictures, and then had him hold the camera. So as I just did like a short 1-minute little clip to put up on Instagram, but it was it was really, really nice, and
dope.
Drank some great stuff.
Well, you look relaxed, sir. Welcome back to the land, to real life.
Back to the city.
Back to the city. Yeah. But it's summer, so who cares? Let's have fun. Speaking of fun, this is an episode that I've been looking forward to for many moons. We have teased this book. I'm going to say in like every other episode, we've talked around this book.
Yep.
And tonight we're diving into one of my favorite comics that I have discovered of all time. It's one that I just reread it again. I just finished it today, actually. And it's probably my 7th or 8th time through it. My God, it's good. And the whiskey that we're drinking tonight is something very special as well. So we're going to start there. We're going to start with the whiskey, mostly because it's been sitting. I've had this sample that you poured for me and sent it to me. It's been sitting in my cabinet for months.
Yeah.
And this is a whiskey. Since the end of April. Since April, yeah. And we're coming up at the end of July when we're filming this. So this is something that we've had this bottle in our possession prior to giving it to you. It was November when we bought it. So you can tell the story about this amazing Bruichladdich that we're going to be drinking.
Yeah, so we're
I'm
drinking.
Probably going to start smelling as you're talking because oh my god, I'm so excited.
So you haven't even smelt this yet.
No, I have not. I wanted my reaction to be genuine.
Yeah,
but
so
tell the people what we're drinking.
Yeah, so we're drinking the Bruichladdich Black Art 8.1 is the version that we have. So this is a whiskey that I have tried and failed to drink for many years.
Yes.
So it seemed like every time, so like I'm up in Ottawa, and every time I would go to say like the Highlander pub, which unfortunately is now closed, or now the new one, well, not the new one, but the one with the largest collection up here, Deacon Brody's. Every time I would go, they're like, "Oh, we just ran out." Or so like I would look online and it would say there's a bottle of the Black Art there, and I was like, "Oh, fantastic! I want to go down and try it." And by the time I could make it down, the bottle had disappeared. To the point where Deacon Brody's actually got the inventory from the Highlander, and were able to bring it over, and there were 3 bottles of Black Art that came over. Now they weren't full bottles.
That. It was was it a 5, 6, 8?
I think it was a 5. Yeah.
6, and then
and then the new one. And so I was messaging them on Instagram, just like, "Hey, oh sweet, like I'm so happy about this. I'm gonna come down this weekend." And so I went down, and of course they like, "Oh, like sorry, the 2 bottles that we had in here, like they're gone. We're getting the other one later this week." I was like, "Oh sweet, like make sure to put a sample aside, or like I'll come back." And then it didn't make it, or I didn't make it in time. Yeah. So this has been something I've been talking about for a few years, and you and Dad, knowing this, obviously, when I turned 40, decided to go out and acquire a bottle of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was one of those. He was down around post Thanksgiving, or it might have been at Christmas actually, when they came and hung out with us for Christmas this year, right before all the lockdown stuff happened. And I think we were just looking at craft cellars, and they had a bottle, and I think they were running a sale, or maybe not. And we were just like, I mean, you turn 40 once. We knew we wanted to do something special and something nice for you for your 40th. And yet we knew that you had been talking about this for so long that when we saw that they had one in stock, we were just like, fuck it. let's just pull the trigger. But then we were worried because we didn't get the last one off of Craft Cellars, so they still had one. And there was a couple of times that you and I were talking, and when you couldn't get the samples from Deacon Brody's, and you were like, "You know what? F this. I'm turning 40 this year. I'm just going to buy it myself. I'm going to buy myself a 40th birthday present. I'm just going to buy this." And so I kept having to like text our dad and just be like, "We got to throw him off. We got to like, do we just tell him like, cause he might just buy it." And at the time, Dad was just like, "Well, I mean, if he's going to buy it, he's going to do it through me, and then I'll push him off of it or something like." So we had this whole plan we were going to like try and bait and switch you or something like that. If you ended up trying to pull the trigger on it and buying it yourself. But anyway, so it's a 26-year-old whiskey from Bruichladdich. So this is a no joke dram that we're drinking tonight.
So it's a 45 ABV. At 26 years old. So this was distilled in 1994.
So this is like the least hot take ever, but I'm gonna put it out there like it's a hot take. I really effing love old whiskeys. And again, I know a lot of people do. But
my goodness.
Telling you, man, for those people out there, if you haven't tried anything that's like 25 years and up, it's an experience.
It really is something different.
It's crazy. It's one of those things that like you think, oh yeah, sure, 18-year-old whiskey, blah, 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 25. Like there is something about these older whiskeys that are really interesting.
They're special.
They're special.
They're
not.
I wouldn't an experience.
Yeah, it is an experience.
They're not always. The
they're not always better.
They're not always better. That's the thing.
They're different.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like I've said this many times on the show before, and I'll say it again. I have not tried this. This might blow what I'm about to say out of the water. Bunnahabhain 18 is my favorite whiskey. Just hands down, that's my favorite whiskey. I've tried a Deanston 40. I've been lucky enough to try the Bunnahabhain 46-year-old, which was awesome. But, at $10,000 a bottle, odds of me ever trying that or buying one of those, slim to none. But Bunnahabhain 18 is my favorite whiskey of all time. A lot of people think that once you get over 18, you start losing complexity and it gets, kind of weird and not as good. They get funky and all that stuff. But I kind of really dig old whiskey funk.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to keep the ABV up high, right? Like the longer something's in the cask, it does mellow out, and you do lose some of the strength. Like, we're both big fans of cask strength whiskey, right? It's hard to get old, like getting old cask strength whiskey. Like, it's not a thing. Like, you're not going to find a 30-year-old bottle at 57%.
Yeah.
So
Bruichladdich is an Islay for those that don't know.
So it's an Islay, and it is known mainly for making peated whiskey.
Octomore.
Like Octomore. Yeah. The Laddie, the classic Laddie, which comes in like the Tiffany blue tin and bottle. Yeah. They've got a bunch of like organic barley expressions. I mean, the Octomore is one of our favorites, near and dear to our heart. Obviously, we reviewed that already. But this one, what's really interesting about this one, they don't tell you the casks.
Yeah.
So, and it's been matured in, like, that it's been matured in multiple casks,
right?
But they don't tell you at all. And that's sort of part of the intrigue that drew me towards this is like trying to decipher what this is all about. So just give me your impressions on the nose first off.
So the nose, it's not strong. It's not like iodine or like, I'm not getting a lot of alcohol burn. There's definitely sherry influence in this whiskey for sure. Yeah. For sure. I mean, there's probably some, ex-bourbon. It probably, I'm going to say it probably did a lot of its maturation and aging in ex-bourbon. Yeah. And then it's probably a whole mix of different finishes that they've done. Yeah. The cool thing with these old whiskeys too, that I've, read and seen and heard other people talk about is yes, it's a 26-year-old, but there's a good chance you're getting older stuff in here. That's just the youngest. That's the whole age statement thing, is that'll be the youngest that they put on it. But there might be some 30-year-old, some 30-plus-year-old stuff that they found in the back. Yeah. And we're blending it together and just said, yep, here we go. Yeah. This is the magic formula for this release, right?
Yeah.
So I think Black Art's is the Jim McEwen whiskey, right?
Yeah, this is the one that he was toying around with when he was the master distiller there.
If you want to know more about Jim McEwen, folks, Amazon Prime has a documentary on Jim McEwen, basically. But it's on the whiskey industry as a whole, but it really does center around Jim McEwen as he's about to retire from Bruichladdich. And it tells the whole story about the reopening of Bruichladdich and basically ends with him releasing the Black Arts, which I know a lot of people say that the Black Art 6 is the pièce de résistance. And I don't know if that was his last one before he retired or what. But anyway, he's one of the all-stars in the whiskey industry. But so I'm getting some sherry on this for sure. I'm getting some raisins, and I'm getting some pears and apples and stuff on the nose. Little bit of spice, kind of some vanilla on it, but again, there's not a lot of alcohol burn.
No,
no
you can
smoke.
You can get your nose right deep in there, and it's not gonna give you the tingles all up your nose something with a higher ABV is going to. There's absolutely zero peat, which was the first thing I noticed when on my birthday, I opened this. We were all on Zoom together because we wanted to see my reactions, and I opened a couple incredible bottles that my wife also got me. So it was a heck of a night. But then I poured this right away, and I was like, look, I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting to do a special neck pour video that we do. I was like, look, try it. I'm just trying this one right now. So when I put my nose in there for the first time, I remember being confused in a really good way, because it is super interesting. It's complex. It's like, yes, it definitely did spend a lot of time in ex-bourbon. Like there's a lot of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of barrel influence being a 26-year-old whiskey. Like you can tell that it spent a lot of time in oak because you're getting some of those sweet vanillas that are coming through on the nose. But then you're right, like there's some pear. One of the things that you and I, when we're talking, I can't remember if we've mentioned this on one of the pods before, one of the videos, but when you get into these older whiskeys, you get like old leather chair or like an old leather book.
So
right?
as you were just talking there, for those who aren't watching this, I took my first sip, and I was going to come back and say on the palate, it's got that classic 25 plus year old whiskey, old book, old leather bound journal, and like that warehousey, that warehouse, old warehouse. And that's the thing with these old whiskeys that I love. I love that like old leathery, like kind of like a old tobacco kind of like, if you go into like a grandparent's house who used to smoke pipes, or like you walk into a humidor or something like that, or but like a really old restaurant that's been around for a long time where people used to smoke cigars and stuff, and it's just like old smoky meat, smoking jackets. This totally has that leathery quality on the palate, and I love it.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I haven't had a sip yet, but even just like swirling it around, like it's oily. Like it's sticking to the glass. Like the legs are, I mean, I don't know, this probably isn't going to show up very well on the camera, but whatever. So it's really, really nice. It's sweet. There's it's almost like a maple syrup quality to it. Like that was the first thing that I picked out on my first sip. It was thick. It was coating the tongue, kind of like a syrup. You do get a bit of the maple, like some nuts in there on the palate as well. I'm going in. You start talking. I'm gonna drink.
Should we just dump a bunch of water on and see what happens? I'm kidding. I would never touch this with water.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll open it up. Send my sample back.
Apologies for the language. Fuck me, this is really good.
This is something, isn't it? Thank you and the Whiskey Dad.
Hey,
because man.
No problem. Thank you for sharing. You know what? I'm jumping the gun to the end of the episode. Folks, go, if you can afford it, go buy it. This is not an everyday sipper by any means. This is a Christmas Day or Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
You've got all your work done for Christmas. You know, for me at our house, my wife and I, we have our big dinner is Christmas Eve. I would love to have this post Christmas dinner, looking at the snow with a roaring fire.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. This up a mountain would also be great. This is a fantastic whiskey. It is not cheap. We will say that.
No, it's not.
I haven't looked recently.
I was going to say, I'm on the Bruichladdich website. So it's currently listed at 280 pounds.
Yeah. So you're like $460 to $500 probably,
I mean, it's, I would say it's gone up even since, like it's gone up since, I hope it's gone up even since you guys bought it.
We don't love you that much. We didn't.
I was going to say
$600 on you.
Hopefully not.
No.
So I remember, seeing this in the low 400s at some point.
You know what? I'm trying to think. I think it was 4-ish, and I think it may have been one of those. They were running at 12 or 15%, so it might have been like $3.99 or something that we grabbed it at. You know, a lot of the times I've been seeing 25-year-old whiskeys $600, and it's, you know, that's just kind of where you're at for 25. So you're going to be paying that for this whiskey, but if you can afford it, or if you've got a chance, if there's a whiskey pub around you that has this, shit, I don't want this glass to end.
And go back to the nose now. Like, once your palate's opened up, I find going back to the nose, you're getting like a honeyed citrus quality. It's
almost like a candied orange kind of thing, like, or one of those, like burnt sugary stuff to it. But holy crap, this is fantastic.
Then, you get like on the finish for me, I'm getting more of like those nuts. Almost like a cream, like a hazelnut cream that you get inside like a chocolate. Like just this really nice warm sweetness, which is one of the other things that's incredibly shocking about this coming from Bruichladdich is that's not what they're known for. Right. So they really knocked this one out of the park, and I'm thrilled to have this up on the shelf, and even more so to being able to share this with you. And we sent a sample back to the Whiskey Dad as well, because I was like, I mean, you've got to try this. It's if you can.
Has he tried it yet?
No.
Oh.
So now he has tried a previous iteration of this.
Oh, okay.
Because there was someone. Well, there was someone in town who I think had a bottle, and he was able to get his hands on. I don't know if it was the 5-1 or someone gave him half an ounce or something. So
I think this is really,
really nice.
This is really, really good. You know what else is really good? Death Vigil.
Oh my gosh. Talk to me.
Can we talk about this book, please?
Yes.
Okay. Death Vigil, folks. You've heard us talk about it. About how much we love it, or how much we were going to talk about a book that we love. This book.
This is the one.
This is the one. So Death Vigil from Image Comics by artist and author Stepan Sajic, or Sage. I think it's Sajic. Sejic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Croatia,
I believe, is where he is. So
it is awesome.
Yeah, first of all, this story effing rocks. He is one of my favorite artists in the game right now. So how I came across this book was actually through friends of ours, the lovely folks at the Talking Comics podcast, mainly Steve, who, for those who remember our Mortal Kombat review, the movie review podcast, Steve was our guest on that. Yep. He's also been a guest on other comic book shows that we've done with him. But so they were talking about this. I think I was listening to the Talking Comics pod right when the story was wrapping up, and they were doing their year-end awards show.
Right.
And I believe if they didn't give him the award, he was nominated for Artist of the Year, and this was in Book of the Year for them. And then I remember like just talking to Steve via text, and I was like, I really want to try this Death Vigil book because you guys loved it so much. And he was like, Heroes has the trade on for $8 right now. It's like, it's upstairs in the back right corner, like buried under some stuff, but there's like 3 copies. I saw them there like last week. I have no idea why it's there, but it's $8. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'll go down tomorrow. So I went down, grabbed it, and opened it. And like, I think it's like page 4 is like the page that we'll get to that was like your favorite artwork in that book. And I was just like, this book rocks. I'm going to get to it. So if you haven't read it and you don't want any spoilers, I'll put the timestamp in the description on when we stop talking about this and go back to non-spoilery stuff in the book, so you can skip forward if you don't want story spoiled. So there's your warning. Yeah. We're going to get into it. So Death Vigil, this story, it's your classic story of good versus evil, with, you know, a group of people who are the warriors, you know, the mystical warriors protecting all of us from the forces of evil.
Yep.
The twist in this is they are led by the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
Bernie. Who is Bernadette, who's the badass female lead who's on the cover of the book.
Yeah.
Right there as Bernie. Yeah.
Flying with awesome wings and her giant sickle.
And a giant sickle. So, you know, the story centered around her, but there's a number of characters that kind of come in and out. You know, but the main crux of the story to kind of get us into the world is Clara, who, you know, gets turned and becomes a new member of the Death Vigil. And then it's the whole story about her ingratiating in the Death Vigil and her kind of main arc. But there's a whole other story involved that, you know, they bring in, there's liches and there's banshees and there's primordial evils and there's the, what are they called? The pale
the Pale Court.
The Pale Court were the bad guys. Like,
well, the main, yeah. So like you've got the Death Vigil, and they're fighting against the Necromancers.
Yeah.
Who are all about, bringing things back from the dead and controlling. And the way they do that is they tattoo these sigils onto their bodies, which allow them to then connect with some type of evil. Be they can summon a lich, they can summon a banshee. Then the super powerful, like Pale Court style dream sigils are the ones that can summon these like primordials, which are just giant awesome monsters, like
Chimera Godzilla level monsters that just rip cities apart. And there's fights between two primordials. And so the story has Maria. So there's this like codex, the ancient tombs of like the Pale Court with all of these sigils for necromancy, and someone is able to decipher them. And so she then strikes this deal. But anyway, it talks about like stuff from like 3,000 years ago, because Bernadette has been in charge of the Death Vigil for that long, and there's betrayal and there's action. But so I bought this book, flew through it. I think it was a while before I actually got it to you, because I was just like, I'm just going to keep this and I want to keep reading it. So when did you first read it?
So it was recently. So
was it when we like started doing the show that I was like, you've got to read this damn book?
So it was Thanksgiving 2020.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah, because
I've had this book for so long.
Yeah, and I don't like, for those watching, I'm holding up the copy and it's all warped and damaged because one of my kids spilt water on it while you lent it to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just ruined your favorite book. And you're like, don't worry. So you went and got another one from Heroes.
Didn't care.
But I flew through it, and it was so cool. And so like the powers that the Death Vigil use, they have these things called Veil Rippers, which allow them to like summon some type of power. Yeah. So some of them, like the one guy, he's like a blind Russian guy, and he's got a pistol. Yeah. And the whole point of these Veil Rippers is if you touch a necromancer with it, it burns away their tattoos. It gets rid of the sigils. They no longer can access this, necromancy, and they go back to being like a rather broken version of their previous selves.
Yeah.
Sometimes they survive and sometimes they don't. Yeah. But that's the main point, is they have to use they're like enchanted magical weapons to touch one of the necromancers. Yeah. So dude with a gun, pretty straightforward. Now he's blind, so he can't see anything. So that's problematic. But how are these Veil Rippers like given? Like how, like explain that process, because I find this really interesting.
It's such a cool story. I don't want to say trope, like a cool like plot point on how or explanation for it. So when you become a member of the Death Vigil, it's the sickle, or it's the veil, grants you your Veil Ripper, but it's all based off of a powerful memory from your past. And then the whole other side of it is you have no idea how they work. Yeah. And then you have to figure out how they work, and everyone's different, and they can all kind of do different things. There's a bug in my room. I think you could probably see that fly by.
I saw it. Yeah.
Did you? That's awesome. Yeah. So Clara, the main, the main character in the story, her Veil Ripper is a quill. Now, the person who she first meets, Sam, is known as the Gravedigger because his Veil Rippers are a shovel and a pick. Yeah. And so he just dual wields this shovel and pick, and it's mostly just for hacking and smashing and busting heads. But the one thing that he can do with the pick is he can summon a ghost ship of zombie Vikings.
Yeah, he does.
To just come and help him fight. It's very, very reminiscent of the Lord of the Rings scene. Yeah. When Aragorn summons all those ghosts to him. And like, it's literally that scene when they jump in Gondor and they're like, oh, look at these three idiots jump off the boats. And then these just ghost monsters come out. It's basically the same thing as that.
That 2-page spread where he's like, so he like slams his pick down into the ground, and like this ethereal chain like appears and he like pulls it, and he's pulling this just hit the microphone. I'm so excited. He's like pulling this entire ship up out of the ground, and he's like, oh yeah, and mine does this sometimes.
It's like he's in a fight with this necromancer, and the necromancer like brings in backup, and he's like, oh, you brought backup? So did I. Time to meet my boys.
Yeah.
And they just like come up like, what's up, Sam? It's like, yeah. Can you go punch those guys for me? And they're like, awesome, let's do this.
Yeah. Yes, this is great.
Oh man, it's so cool. So yeah, so then they all have different powers, and there's like James is like a young kid, and he's got a deck of cards, and it's very Gambit-ish.
Like,
and then he was really cool. But then his also, so he's basically Basil exposition. I found like he does a lot of the exposition storytelling. Yes. But they bring in a lot of like, they bring in a lot of like fantasy storytelling, D&D kind of character archetypes too. So like, there's your tanks and your paladin, like Bernadette is a paladin.
Yeah.
And then like Sam's your
tank,
your barbarian tank, your fighter. And then there's rogues and there's clerics and there's bards and there's like all those things. So it kind of, as two brothers who play Dungeons and Dragons and love fantasy storytelling, this it also hits all those notes of like, so it's like a cool kind of horror book. Like it's not for kids by any means. It's not necessarily a happy story. There's a lot of death and violence in it. But it's like interesting storytelling.
I was going to say, it starts off with Claire's boyfriend saying, I love you, going to his father's grave and killing her. And using, yeah.
Yeah. That's the only way to become the necromancer was to sacrifice. Yeah. And like later on, there's another necromancer who wanted to get one of the primordials.
Yeah.
And that needed a bigger sacrifice. So he kills his own daughter, which is rough.
Yeah.
But then she becomes a primordial, and she's, I think, my favorite character in this book.
So good.
Is Mia.
Oh yeah. And her
she's
and
awesome.
Sam. And her and Sam, or not her and Sam.
James.
Her and James. Yeah, like are just best friends.
Like two friends.
It's so fun.
Yeah. So it's super cool, but like the art is bonkers. Like
it's
just
so good.
It's so good. The Abyss, the lead bad guy.
Yeah.
So he's also a primordial, and it's just like those scenes where he comes up out of like that cavern. Mm-hmm. And it's just this giant monster, and then the monster opens its mouth to talk, and then this like friggin' like humanoid undead demon god like stands up like out of the monster's
like
tongue.
Where the tongue would be. Yeah.
That, when I first saw that, it's insane how I mean, it's one of those things where it's like man, I want that on my wall because it's so cool, but I'm like, that's so fucking twisted to say that, because it is a demented piece of artwork, but like it's like oddly gorgeous.
Oh, it's beautiful because even the architecture of where they are. So they're in like underground. Did they say what city it is? Whatever.
It's New York.
New York. Yeah, you're right. It is New York. Yeah. So they're like underground. It looks like this like old classic bank with like, stone walls, and they go through this like vault style door. And then it looks like the Bridge of Khazad Dûm. Ooh, where she like walks out to the end of it, and then it just stops, and there's just this smoky, like wafting smoke, and this huge primordial just all like comes up out. Oh. And she's just standing there like, hey, Abyss.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so good.
Yeah.
Like I just finished it today, and I'm probably going to reread it again this weekend.
It's
been a while since I read it.
It is one of those ones you can go through over and over, and it's
Again, I think I've read it 7 or 8 times. It was like my go-to when I was traveling for work.
Yeah,
like conferences. If I was like, because there was a conference I would go to, like Kansas City every year. I was doing that, or going out to the East Coast, and it's a lot of time in airports and planes by yourself and hotels by yourself. This was like my go-to. That I was like, I know that this will very much keep me entertained. It'll take me all of my travel time to read it. But because you can really take your time because the artwork is so crazy. Like you can really dive in and just do a lot of like just looking and picking up new things and stuff on it. So it was like my go-to for travel for a long time. I actually picked up the single issues as well.
Oh, did you?
In Charlottetown. I was there for
okay.
I was there for a conference, and then on like the main drag on Charlottetown PEI, there was a comic shop, and that's so I walked in, and I was just kind of like looking around, and I was like, oh, and I think that was like my second time reading through the book, and I was like, I wonder if they've got the single issues, and they had all 12.
Oh,
and so I was like, well,
awesome. Yep, there we go.
This worked out well. I will take all of these. And so here's the very exciting part. This was written, I can't remember when this came out. It's been a while because
you keep talking. I'll find out.
Okay. But it's like this came out a while ago. But the very, very exciting part is that just recently an announcement came out that Volume 2 is on its way. So we are getting Death Vigil Volume 2. I think it's either the end of this year or early 2022.
I can't wait.
Either way, folks, you have time to catch up before Volume 2 comes out.
So this was first published in 2015.
Oh, okay. So I must have grabbed that pretty much right when it was done. Is when I first grabbed it. Awesome. But this book rules. I love this book.
Yeah.
Please make this into a show.
Oh, can you imagine?
Oh my God.
Like a nice little 10 episode, HBO, Amazon Prime.
Here it is. Give me Cate Blanchett as Bernie.
Yes.
Right?
Perfect.
It's basically taking her Ragnarok character and like making her good. But it's that kind of character, and like put her in that role would be so perfect.
So good. And Sam is very Thor-like. Like even his look in the book, right? Like he is, he's got the fun, like the Death Vigil, all of them have like that stock white hair.
Yeah.
Because that's just part of it. It's like you've died and this is what happens.
Yeah.
But like he's very Thor looking and
But
this would be so much fun.
So I can't remember her name, but the girl that plays 11 in Stranger Things.
Oh,
give me her as Mia
Brown. What's her?
Yeah.
It's not going to come to me. Not in time to make this worthwhile as we're
fine.
Yeah.
But like put her in as Mia as the like little primordial, like come on.
Oh yeah.
Come on. I could
So good.
Maybe we'll have to do a special edition something where we just cast this as a movie and then just do nothing but pitch this for Stapon. Cause man, that would be so good.
It's a lot of fun.
It'd be very, very good. Give it the Shadow and Bone treatment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you haven't watched Shadow and Bone, folks, on Netflix, that show rocked.
That was a lot of fun.
So good.
Talk about that at some point.
We will. We'll do we're going to start doing deep dives on stuff, but I need to drink more whiskey.
I was going to say, get back in here. Like going back in now, I'm able to pick up like almost a mint, like a spearmint on the nose.
It's so weird. It could just be
herbal.
Could be my brain tricking me because when right as you were saying that, it's kind of minty. But I'm wondering if it's because you said that. You know, that thing when someone's like, hey, this is why I always say try to smell and taste a whiskey before reading notes.
Yeah.
Like don't have someone say, here, drink this. It's going to taste like hazelnuts and oranges and
yeah.
But
and it's just like a vanilla-y syrup. Like it's just like it's richer. It's richer than just saying it's like, oh, it's like, vanilla ice cream or like, it's like it's a thicker than that.
The maple syrup that you talked about, it's obviously not that thick, but it almost feels that thick.
Yeah.
When you're drinking it, which
it's like that nice the mouth feel.
Yeah.
It's
just such a gross thing to talk about, but
mouth. Yeah.
We all do it.
No, it's really nice. It's not something that is only good at the front end. Like, there's some whiskeys that you'll have where like the initial sip, you kind of get that burst of flavor and then it fades, or it's something that builds and it's really only the finish that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
Like I find this has a really nice, well-rounded experience, right?
Yes.
From like the nose is complex. It's like, I don't like, the only word I could think of is it's playful. There's a lot happening, and and because you don't know exactly which kind of cask it comes from, you're not able to just be like, oh, it's a sherry cask, so it's this, this, and this, or oh, you know, it was in a port pipe, so you're gonna get these things. You know, like, yes, obviously it spent some time in ex-bourbon. It's a 26-year-old whiskey. You know, it's not like they sat it in the same thing for the entire time. It, you know, would have spent some time in some ex-bourbon. I mean, the color and the flavor notes, like, there's
got to be some sherry in there somewhere.
There's some sherry influence in there.
Wouldn't surprise me if it hit a port as well.
Yeah.
Or if there was some blending with some stuff that
had spent some time.
That it hit some port or something. I'm not really getting any like of the other red wine barrels that we're seeing a lot of, like the
Bordeaux or the
Bordeaux's, or I wouldn't say
Rioja,
but I could
Rioja.
I could be very wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I find things that have spent time in like the ports, the sherries tend to have like the more oily, syrupy feel, as opposed to the stuff that's spent time in wine or just have it and they're just ex-bourbon, or it just, you know.
Yeah, but we're also not. I'm also not experienced enough to be able to say, like, I think it's a hogshead over barrique.
No idea. No idea. Just the influence. Like, I mean, just looking at something, you're like, oh, like this spent some time in something that has some dark coloring, because you know, there's no color added, and so clearly it had to pick that up from somewhere.
Yeah.
So
I really don't want this dram to end. It's really good.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up and give some scores and stuff.
Yeah, the sort of fun thing that I mentioned to you that I wanted to do was like talk about, like, one, what's your favorite veil ripper from the book?
Ooh.
But then also, what do you think your veil ripper would be?
Mm-hmm.
Now, so like, it's tied to a powerful memory. So and it's a little tough because Bernie does say in the book, like, oh, it's never what you expect, or they're not straightforward. So like, we'll have our ideas and say, like, oh, it could be something like this, but, you know, and then how it actually works, you know, like, we can talk about how we think it might work. But anyways, start off with, I'll go first because I, you know, was the one telling you to think about this, so I had a bit more time. I mean, I love Sam's pickaxe because he gets to summon the boat of undead zombie Vikings.
So rad.
But I really like the idea of Clara's feather because she uses it like a portal.
Yeah, I'm picking that one too.
And it's awesome. Like the way that she does it. Like, the funny thing is she uses it when they're just sitting around, like at their house, to scratch her own back.
Yeah.
So she draws a circle in front of her and then one above her shoulder, and then she reaches her hand through and it comes down the back.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
I think my favorite use of that in the book, though, is they go out like on a mission, and then she goes off on her own and like finds this necromancer and like gets him to chase her. And then as he's running up, she just draws a big circle in front of her and he just disappears through it. And then Sam comes up and is like, oh, so where does that one go? And then in the background behind her, she drew a portal like off the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah.
And so you just see this monster falling, and she's like, remember when we first came here and I just drew that circle? And he's like, oh yeah. So she just like set up this big hilarious trap where he just portals off a bridge. That's hands down, I think, my favorite one. Cool. So for mine, the only thing that I could really think of was, and I'm trying to think also in like the D&D parlance a little bit. I think mine would be a violin, because I grew up a fiddle player, for those that don't know. And I think I would totally I'd run the bard character type. More of a support person. I don't know if I would have to like play it and if it would be some sort of like charm or something. But I don't think having a violin, it would be a punchy kind of thing, but it would be some sort of support class. I think that's where mine would go.
Nice.
Yeah.
So like I had a couple ideas for me. The first one that I thought of was like a video game controller.
Love it.
Just because like you and I spent a lot of time growing up, we were playing video games, and I just thought that would be really funny of, you know, like, oh, you've got this old school, like original Nintendo controller. And because then the weird thing would be like, all right, but how do I do anything with this?
Yeah.
And you would have to then have like certain combos to, like, I enjoy playing Magic users whenever, you know, if I'm playing D&D or if I, you know, some other RPG or video games, like I'm constantly picking, you know, people who can do that. So that's sort of where my mind went. But then I also spent a lot of time playing T-ball and baseball, and, you know, just having a bat. It was just like, maybe I just become the tank, you know?
That'd be pretty badass. Just a baseball bat. The one thing I will say, I think one of the reasons, and this kind of goes to what you just said about us being huge video game nerds, is I still play video games quite a bit. And I think one of the reasons why I like Clara's feather is I just got into a brand new game, which is free, called Splitgate.
Yeah.
And it's basically Halo with portals. And you like can create portals and you can do all that cool stuff in that game. So I've been kind of getting it. I've been getting into that game last couple of weeks. It's tons of fun.
Yeah.
It's tons of fun.
So it's tons of fun right now.
That's
because people aren't crazy good at the portal thing yet.
People aren't super sweaty. And much like Fortnite, and there was another game called Hyperscape that was like free that I got into for a little bit, and like Apex Legends and then like Destiny and all that stuff. Much like all those games. It first comes out, it's super fun, and then all the competitive people, like, I mean, it's been out for 3 weeks, so I haven't played it in a few days. I'm sure if I was to jump on, all of a sudden I would be like, oh crap, I'm terrible at this game compared to everybody else already.
Yeah,
because those people just play it all the time. But it's super fun. Speaking of super fun, this was a ton of fun. Let's give some marks.
Yeah.
They're gonna be high as shit.
They are going to be through the roof. Well, I mean, I'm going to start with the pairing and give it a 10 because we knew we were going to do this one even before this bottle had been acquired. We're like, all right, well, we'll do Death Vigil at some point because we love it. I was like, well, And then it was like, okay, well, we're going to put it with Black Art because it just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, well, we're going to have to find some. But this was, again, like we went, I know we've talked about this before, but you know, some of the initial, like the first 5 or 6 that we knew what we were going to pair together. And this was one of them.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, and when we first kind of came up with a concept for this whole thing, it was before you had read this book. Yeah. You're like, all right, so what are some of the books? And I think this was like the second book that I said. It was like, well, we have to do Death Vigil. Mm-hmm. I'm like, and that just gives it's an excuse that you have to read this book.
Yeah. Which has been a nice like side benefit of doing this is getting to read all these amazing books that are out there. It's so good.
I mean, I avoided Saga. I don't know why, just because I had so much other stuff to read until we started doing this.
Yeah, and it's 52 52 issues at the moment at the break point.
Yeah. But yeah, discovering all these new stories through this has been a ton of fun, and like being able to try bonkers cool whiskey is pretty dope as well. So I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now, this book is a perfect 10 for me.
Wow.
It's one of my favorite comics.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite stories that I've read in comic book form. So if anything's going to get a 10, it's going to be this for me. That's my personal opinion, of course, but I'm sure a lot of people would think that there's other books that are better, but I love it.
Yeah. I'm going with a 9.5 just because I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm reserving my first 10 on a book is going to be.
That's fine. You're allowed.
I was going to say I don't have to reiterate everything. It's beautiful. It's the kind of themes that really speak to me. It's the fantasy, you know, there's some fantasy tropes in there. It's the, you know, the ultimate good against the ultimate evil. There's like a frying pan moment, even with Clara, and which we haven't said, and I'm not going to, but even with the, you know, quote unquote main character, there's something with her that is sort of hinted at throughout the first couple, but you don't really get And it's super interesting, and I can't wait till that's explored more in the second book.
That's the thing. It's like, if there was never a volume 2, I was totally happy. Yeah. I was kind of like, when I first read it, I was like, fuck, they're not doing any more of this. And I was searching, like, you've got to do more of this book. How did Image just not say, yeah, keep going?
I know.
Or like, how has a comic book company not done this? And I think he's just doing it by himself, the next one.
My first thing was like, how is this not on Kickstarter? Like,
for real,
just do your own Kickstarter. This will get funded in no time.
Yeah. But I was totally like, at the same time, it's like, leave me wanting more. That's the perfect way to end a story. But it also wraps up the story perfectly.
It does. It wraps up really nicely, and it is refreshing also to read something that's just bookend really well. And you don't, like, it's not going to take up all your time to try and. I'm in the middle of the Star Wars huge War of the Bounty Hunters crossover event. I mean, it's just all encompassing. Like every Star Wars title currently that's like in the main timeline is tied into this. Right. So it's like 4 or 5 books a month for 6 or 7 months. And it's
telling you, man,
it's a lot.
That's the one thing with the big 2 that I like. I will totally get into Marvel and DC for a while, and then these massive events come up, and it's just kind of like, I can't.
It's twice a year.
All the tie-in shit, which is why I'm really recently I've been leaning so much more towards Image and Boom and Aftershock and Vertigo and Vault Comics. So I'm picking up a book tomorrow, which I'll talk about in a podcast, but there's a new book called Barbaric.
Ooh.
Which looks pretty effing cool. So I've got issues 1 and 2 waiting for me at Heroes tomorrow. And that's, from Vault Comics or something like that.
Okay.
Nice. A small indie publisher, but it looks rad. But yeah, so I'm finding myself leaning more towards those because it is just like, it's a one story. We can do it. There's a finish, but anyway.
Yeah. You don't have to do all the other tie-ins.
Yeah.
Every
War of the Realms was incredible.
the Venom King in Black.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you haven't read. I sent you some of them.
I haven't read all of them. No. But the stuff that I've read from King in Black is amazing. So
yeah, it was really cool.
So we're not shitting on you, Marvel and DC. Sorry. It's just, What are you going to give this bad boy? I'm going to let you go out of 100 because I need to go out of 100. I can't.
Yeah.
It's better than a 9.
Yep. It's like 94 to 96. Like, it's really good.
It's really good.
And what's pushing it that high for me is the kind of the mystery of it.
Yeah.
I'm really digging the fact that, so this is only the second time I've had this because I wanted to wait. So like I had the initial one on my birthday, and then I've waited to have another one with you here. And this is going to be an amazing journey with this bottle that every time I have it, it just, because you don't know where it came from. Yeah. It's almost like it's a blind tasting, even though you know exactly what it is. And it's that, and it's super complex. There's multiple barrels with multiple, that have been housed in multiple warehouses, and it's old, and there's a bit of the old funk in there, and it's very intriguing. And so like that's pumping it up above a 9.5 for me. So like I'm going to go with a 96.
Shit. I was going to say 93, 94. But at the same time, like, what the hell are we going to give a 98 to?
Yeah, well, that's just it, right? I don't know.
That Boon of 46 that I tried was incredible. That Boon of 46, the Boon of 38 that we got from my dad, like, those are things that I'm like, this is incredible. The experience is amazing.
Yeah.
We're never going to try it again. I'm never going to buy it. So, I mean, like, I guess I could give, those are Deanston 40. I've had that one too.
Yeah, that's maybe what you reserve the 98s for, because it's an experience. almost the experience more than the taste, right?
Yeah.
It's the journey, not the destination, sort
but
of
like,
thing.
But I kind of think you're right on the 96-ish for this Black Art, and I think it's pumping. It's going to get to that for me because it's actually accessible.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's everyday accessible. Like,
No.
am I gonna close off this recording and then go drop $500 on a bottle? Probably, like, maybe not. You know, this is for me. This is one of those bottles. So as someone who works in sales, this for me would be I had an amazing quarter, or like I had a really good year, and there's this like a little bump in cash. I'm gonna treat myself.
Yeah.
This is a perfect treat yourself day bottle.
Yeah.
If you subscribe to the Tom Haverford and Donna Meagle from Parks and Rec lifestyle of pick one day a year and you treat yourself on just, stuff you would never ever buy and is a ridiculous purchase, but you feel like you deserve it. This is one of those bottles, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this something else that we're going to do at some point is the sort of like rank your shelf.
Rank your cabinet. Yeah, we're going to do a rank your cabinet video, which is going to be fun.
And this is right up there for me for the like special occasion or show off to friends, right? Like you're trying to impress and like brag about something that you've got in your collection. Like this is really good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Your 40th birthday presents, you got 3 bottles that are...
Oh, they're bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm thinking from the 25-year-old whiskey world, I think this is high up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of the 25-year-olds that I've tried.
Well, you don't often get 25-year-olds that we assume have spent so much time in different things.
Yeah.
To sort of blend all these different little things together, right? Like normally it's like, all right, it spent 25 years, which is special enough. And it did 25 years in ex-bourbon.
Yeah.
And no one's like shaking their heads at that. No one's going, it was only an ex-bourbon.
Yeah. Like I did I had a Deanston 20 that was only an Oloroso. Mm-hmm. Like a 20-year Oloroso Deanston. Now, I did that in a tasting, and everyone in that taste, that was the same night that I had the 40.
Yeah.
And everybody loved that Deanston 20. I thought it tasted weird as shit. It was like there was a funk to it that I could not explain or pick out, and it was good, but it was weird and wild. But like, again, I'm like, would I go out and buy a bottle of that? Absolutely not. Was it like a really crazy experience? 100%.
Yeah.
This is really good stuff, though.
Yeah, this is something awesome. Glad I was able to share this with you.
Mm-hmm.
Clink.
Clinkety clink. I really appreciate it. That's going to be it for us, folks. We're going to wrap there. Thank you for coming on this journey on this very special occasion. Go and buy that Death Vigil, please.
Yeah, buy the book. It's
that's
wonderful.
Something that you don't even need to think about.
No, yeah, $8.
Just go buy it.
I mean, even if it was $30,
even if you're paying cover price $25, it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
Go buy it, please. Make sure you go into our website, thewhiskeygeeks.com. You can follow us on Instagram at thewhiskeygeeks. All of that's flashing on the screen, or check the description of the podcast. You should rate and review us as well. That would be really great.
Please.
Yeah. Click a subscribe button. Tell a friend. Put this in your Instagram story or on your Facebook page and get more people to come and like our stuff. Big thank you to Call and Response for the use of Something About Your Love as our theme song, because he's awesome and you should go buy stuff from him too.
100%. Why not? I find myself humming that, and my son is absolutely in love with that song, and he's got it on his Spotify playlist.
Heck yeah. It's a great song. We'll be back with more stuff. We might start a Patreon account too, because we love talking about stuff. So if it's live by the time that this is getting released, that will also flash on the screen. If not, a Patreon is coming, and we're going to do a lot of the stuff that we talked about. We're like, we'll talk about the Invincibles, and we're going to talk about Shadow and Bone and stuff like that. We're going to do Loki. Yes, I got to watch it.
Oh my gosh! Would you please? See, the problem is you're now getting to the point where it might get ruined for you.
I know.
Okay. And you don't want the final episode to get ruined for you.
So we're recording this. It's coming up on the August long weekend.
There you go.
And Tanya's got an extra long weekend. So
perfect.
I will recommend that we burn through it this weekend. Real quick, before we get out of here, I want to ask you one thing, because we're going to do a podcast on this.
Yes.
Have you finished Masters of the Universe Revelation yet?
I have not. I am 4 episodes in.
So you have 1 left?
2. There's 6, right?
Is there only 6? There might only be 5.
Is there 5?
First one.
Oh, yeah. In which case, maybe I'll only have 1 left.
What happened? What was the last thing you saw?
They were down in hell.
Have they gotten out?
No.
They're still down there.
I might have fallen asleep.
Okay.
Because I started watching because I watched 3 in a row starting at 10 o'clock at night.
I got you.
And then, I'm loving it. Oh, the casting is incredible.
I loved it.
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
All you nerds on the internet who are crapping on Kevin Smith and the whole team for making this,
go away.
You can shove it, because it's incredible. And we need more. We need more stuff like this. So yes. I love you, Kevin Smith, for making this show.
It's incredible.
Anyway,
I mean, the artwork.
That's all aside.
Yeah. We'll do that at some point.
We will get into that and other stuff. So thanks a lot, folks, for tuning in. We really appreciate it. For the Whiskey Geeks, I'm Tim.
I'm Alex. Thanks for coming along. And remember, Scotch and stories, they belong together. Cheers.
Cheers.